And basically, I've got a different story about a professional, Hen Yang. Do any of you know him? Okay, you know him a little bit?
He's on the East Coast, and I've seen it.
Yeah, he's up in Boston. But he started off in southwest China, and unfortunately his family was one of the Chinese who took over southwest China around 1600. And when the Cultural Revolution came along, they became targets. And so he was just very young then. They sent him up in the hill tribe, up in the mountains with the Miao tribe. And he played a little bit of Wei Chi, and I think within 6 months he was champion of his area before this happened. And so he spent the next several years keeping away from the Cultural Revolution, which I'm not sure what happened to his parents, but I don't think that they had a happy time. But all he had was his Wei Chi books and playing himself up there. And he came down again finally when everything eased off. And he started winning a lot of tournaments, local tournaments, and then he was in the national scene. And he got selected to be one of 50 people for the first, the Wei Chi Association was founded in the early 80s. And he became one of the first first 50 people in the to become professionals. I mean, there was no professionals at this point. There was no system at this point. And the problem was the government would not let him go to university, which he wanted to do. I think he had a lot of talent in chemistry, because that's what his profession is now. But in any case, he didn't want to play Go and not go to university. And also, too, probably wasn't the top. He was top, but not top. And so he gave up his spot, and this is why Ru Nai Wei got into this professional scene, and she's now the world's strongest woman. Anyway, so what happened then was, he played and worked in China and went to school, and eventually got to America and was living kind of a hand-to-mouth existence in Cleveland. And then he moved to New York and was sort of, cat and mouse life in New York. He was with the New York Go Club, advising the New York Go Club for a while, but for very little money. His family was still in China. And he finally ended up in Boston. He got his family over. And when I met him, he was delivering pizzas and, a nighttime pizza job. And I helped him with English, and we got to know each other a bit. And eventually, he started to get back into the Go scene. And now he's got 3 houses. He's got a good job. And he's also become North American champion. He beat Feng Yuan, who's a 9-dan, to win that one. He's been, I think he was the Fujitsu or Otsa. But anyway, he's been over to China there, and to Japan, some of the tournaments there. I'm a little bit vague about all of his accomplishments, but he's one of these people that can play and be very good, and then play a little bit more and not be so good, and then very good. This is what he's told me. That's not my opinion. So it's a whole different story than when now they've got Ming Ming and this whole system, the system's moving. Then it was like, whoa. So anyway, the other thing was that the girl I'm married with now, we were living together in New York, and she got divorced and got some money. And so we decided to take a trip around the world for a year. And one of the places we came to was China. This is 1985. And people, in 1985, we landed at the airport in China. I think it was in Chengdu. And everybody was still in their Mao suits, the blue suits, and China was still recovering from the Cultural Revolution. A lot of suspicion, and you got to be very careful about what you say if you're Chinese. To us, foreigners just sort of went through like with no problem. Anyway, I got to Beijing, and Terry Benson, who's back there, had given me a letter to introduce myself, and it was the first contact for the AGA with the Chinese Weiqi Association. And I met with a whole group of the Chinese Weiqi Association, about 6 or 7 of the gentlemen there. And it had just been formed a couple of years before. And we sat down and talked. And at that time, everybody in the States thought, oh, Mao played Go, and that's why he won, and so on and so forth. They said, no, that's a myth. He didn't play Go. There's only 3 references to Go that he made, and he really had to explain what he meant by that. Although his method was, as I mentioned in my talk, it's the method of Sun Tzu and these Taoist philosopher warriors that Mao used in his guerrilla warfare. But it really wasn't involved with Go. And I happened to meet a Russian who was at this association. He was from the Russian beginnings of Go, and he said that the reason that they got funding from the state was because they pointed out that, in chess, you've got your kings and queens and all this kind of thing, and of course, chess is big in Russia, but Go, nobody played Go. They says, well, all the pieces are equal, so they kind of forced the government into sponsoring Go in Russia, so that was, those days in Beijing, and I was hanging out in the Beijing hotel and watching these businessmen get taken apart by Chinese contracts and everything else, and they're, oh gosh, in the Beijing hotel, in the lobby. So anyway, so I went out to the park to look at Go, and wow, I mean, there were packs of young guys out there because they had nothing to do. There were no jobs, and they just played Go all day long. And of course, me being a foreigner, I'd sit down, and there'd be an immediate crowd, and I'd start playing with something. I was about a 4Q then, or something like that, maybe 5-4Q, American 5 or 4Q. And everybody'd be talking, in Chinese about what move should be, and I sort of would pick out what I thought was the best guy and follow his advice, It was fun. But there was just, every day there were just lots and lots of people playing Go, and everybody was having a good time. They just weren't making any money. But that changed, because the last time I was in Beijing, there was nobody in the park playing Go. So anyway, that's what Go was like in 1985 in Beijing. So that's, and I might add too, it might as well, we got time. I went to Taiwan it was just after, I was going to go to mainland China, and then Tiananmen happened, and it was like that T-shirt that says, nuclear blast, there goes my career, oh no, and Tiananmen, like, oh no. But I ended up in Taiwan, and I had a great time there. I was playing in the southeast in Taidong at this club that would meet every week, and this one guy took me under his wing. I was just, again, a 4 or 5Q, and I could, he was teaching me and everything. Very nice guy. And I played in some of the clubs in Taipei. I can suggest, look up Go in Taipei, because you go up these stairs and you're in here, and then you're in this thing. And you can see, if you're looking close, the money's under the table, and these guys are having a great time. So there we go. Okay. Find this, you could, not anymore. He brought up how there's a picture of Fujisawa Suko in a lot of places. One of the things that happened in '85 was I got word that Fujisawa Shuko was going to be, he would tour China, and periodically, every year, he would come over and give his expertise to the professionals, and the higher ranking amateurs at that point too. And it was a whole scene in an auditorium at night, freezing cold. And there he was there were 2 players playing, and here he was directing this, finally, the guy made an error, and oh, that's where you did it, and so he was a big help in bringing up, everybody knows this there, but nobody knows it here, but he was a huge help in bringing things up. Anyway, so that's the China panel.